Beneath the cold moonlight of the dark night, the village lay silent amidst steep cliffs, the stillness of the air a grim omen of an impending catastrophe. A man hurried forward, his face etched with visible anxiety and urgency. He struggled to keep going, his heart consumed by a single thought: he had to warn the elder of the hidden White Flower clan immediately. But at that very moment, a giant centipede suddenly burst forth from the shadows. A bone-chilling hiss echoed through the air as the giant centipede struck, leaving the henchman collapsed on the ground in terror. A scream of agony tore through the quiet night of the village. Inside the room, a woman writhed in pain, foam spilling from her mouth as tears streamed down her face. In her delirium, the woman gasped out Jagang's name, ordering him to flee at once. Jagang stood frozen, realizing his mother was succumbing to a deadly, venomous toxin. To his horror, Jagang saw a giant centipede clinging tightly to his mother's body. The giant centipede writhed, ready to sink its sharp, venomous fangs into Jagang. Jagang was paralyzed with panic as the giant centipede lunged directly at him. A heartbreaking cry escaped Jagang's lips as he was struck by the giant centipede. Looking at his mother lying there, Jagang screamed in helplessness while the giant centipede continued to coil around him. Jagang's grandfather rushed in, his voice filled with despair as he witnessed the horrific scene. Jagang writhed on the floor, the giant centipede now crushed within his mouth. Jagang's grandfather roared in fury, consumed by rage toward the one responsible for this atrocity. He cradled his grandson, desperately trying to shake him back to consciousness in this critical hour. The villainous elder appeared, laughing callously about how the precious pill had fallen into the hands of a useless brat. The villainous elder declared that the hidden White Flower clan would never bow to him. He sneered, mocking that no matter what he did, Jagang's grandfather would never be able to save his grandson. He boasted triumphantly about having intentionally placed the giant centipede in their room. Jagang's grandfather was stunned, unable to believe what he had just heard. Terror gripped Jagang's grandfather as he realized it was the most lethal toxin in existence. The villainous elder coldly ordered Jagang's grandfather to get out immediately. Jagang's grandfather stepped out heavily, still clutching the unconscious Jagang in his arms. The villainous elder looked down, showing a glimmer of curiosity toward Jagang's condition. Jagang's grandfather desperately tried to rouse him, praying for a miracle. The villainous elder was astounded to see that Jagang still retained consciousness after being poisoned. Jagang struggled to crawl, his desperate will to live forcing the villain to gasp in disbelief. The villainous elder recoiled in shock at the sight of a glowing red fragment beneath his feet, while Jagang lay on the ground, his hand still gripping the bloody evidence. The fragment of the giant centipede was embedded deep in the elder's boot, a testament to the life and death struggle that had just transpired. The villainous elder stood dazed, his face pale as he realized that what he had just stepped on was the husk of the giant centipede. Losing his composure, the villainous elder launched a brutal attack on the prone Jagang. Force of the blow caused the elder to lose his balance and collapse to the ground, to the shock of the sword-wielding henchman and the others around him. The villainous elder shrieked in agony, gripped by terror as he realized he had been poisoned by the giant centipede's husk with no antidote in sight. The sword-wielding henchman panicked and asked for orders, but the elder could only roar for them to take immediate action. The cold blade of the sword-wielding henchman swung, delivering a lethal strike through the darkness. The villainous elder threw his head back and screamed, the pain from the wound coursing through his entire body. Despite his agony, the villainous elder still ordered his men to hunt down Jagang and his grandfather at any cost. The villainous elder screams manically, forcing his subordinates to go all out to ensure Jagang and his grandfather do not escape. Inside the dark cave, Jagang and his grandfather lie there, their breathing weak following agonizing bouts of coughing. Jagang's grandfather struggles to sit up, his clouded eyes calling out Jagang's name in desperation. Jagang lies motionless, surrounded by the shattered remains of the giant centipede, the final weapon that brought them both to this dire situation. Jagang and his grandfather lie there, their life force fading, facing the impending shadow of death. Torches flare up amidst the rain, the subordinate holding the torch shouts out as he discovers the trail of Jagang and his grandfather. The villainous elder and his henchmen storm in, panting heavily, their eyes filled with murderous intent. The elder's subordinate checks the bodies, confirming that Jagang's grandfather is dead, leaving only Jagang still clinging to life. The villainous elder grabs Jagang by the hair, staring down at his scarred face with a sinister smirk. Lightning streaks across the sky as the villainous elder flashes a wicked grin, preparing for his next cruel acts. Jagang wakes up in excruciating pain, his breath coming in short gasps and sweat pouring down his body like rain. Jagang is tied tightly to a wooden board, completely helpless before Mang Ryo, who stands right beside him. Mang Ryo looks down at Jagang with a look of pure astonishment. He cannot believe that Jagang is still alive after being poisoned by the five-colored centipede. When Jagang wheezes out a call for his grandfather, Mang Ryo simply sneers, coldly confirming that the old man has already died from his poison. Mang Ryo's cruel hand tightens around Jagang's chin, forcing him to face the harsh reality. Mang Ryo has changed his mind. Instead of ending his life, he decides to turn Jagang into a test subject for new types of toxins. A black centipede crawls sluggishly on Mang Ryo's hand.
He introduces this as the next dose of poison for Jagang.
Jagang screams in despair as the black centipede is placed on him, while Mang Ryo casually refers to him as a precious ingredient.
Mang Ryo cannot hide his excitement as he witnesses Jagang's violent reaction. Losing patience, Mang Ryo lashes out with a whip, striking Jagang to force him to be silent and lie still. Lash of Mang Ryo's whip tears through the air, leaving a terrifying echo in its wake.
Jagang is in absolute agony, his heartbreaking screams piercing through the torture chamber.
Mang Ryo just smirks, viewing Jagang's pain as nothing more than a form of amusement.
The next day, Mang Ryo returns, forcing Jagang to drink a strange broth to keep him fully conscious. Jagang has no choice but to swallow the concoction that Mang Ryo calls the memory broth.
Mang Ryo explains that this broth enhances memory, ensuring Jagang can never forget the pain he is causing him. Mang Ryo wants Jagang to stay alert to observe every single reaction of his body to the poison experiments. Jagang coughs violently as his body begins to react intensely to the toxin Mang Ryo just forced him to drink.
Mang Ryo nonchalantly reveals that he added pufferfish toxin to the broth, 10 times the normal dose.
Mang Ryo laughs gleefully, relishing in this sadistic experimental game he is playing on Jagang's body.
Weeks of continuous torture pass in haunting silence.
Even after many months, Jagang remains imprisoned in this living hell. Mang Ryo diligently records every result after each poison experiment performed on Jagang.
Thanks to that broth, Jagang's consciousness remains sharp. He is forced to endure the pain with a completely clear mind.
For Jagang, this is an endless layer of hell with no way out.
Mang Ryo begins to wonder about the strange nature of Jagang's body as his internal energy seems to have turned to stone.
Mang Ryo cannot comprehend why the toxins he introduces disappear completely inside Jagang's body. Even so, Mang Ryo feels extremely intrigued to continue his research on Jagang. Mang Ryo shows off the extreme widow spider, one of the most dangerous toxic creations of the poison set. Not wanting to waste any time, Mang Ryo drops the venomous spider onto the restrained Jagang.
The spider sinks its venom-filled fangs into Jagang's neck, leaving him gasping for air in immense pain.
Jagang's screams echo throughout the room, but Mang Ryo just nonchalantly prepares more poison. Mang Ryo coldly observes Jagang writhing in excruciating agony.
Jagang wheezes, begging for his life as the poison spreads throughout his entire body. Mang Ryo looks down at Jagang with disdain, as if he is waiting for something to happen. Sinister smile appears on Mang Ryo's face as he prepares to make his next move. Mang Ryo grabs Jagang by the throat, growling about the price Jagang has to pay. Mang Ryo blames Jagang for causing him to get injured and losing his status on the front lines. Jagang can only stare back at Mang Ryo with vacant eyes, having no strength left to resist.
Mang Ryo throws Jagang onto the table, coldly checking his condition.
Looking at Jagang's motionless body, Mang Ryo is suddenly gripped by panic, fearing that Jagang might already be dead. Jagang lies there, his breathing so faint it's as if his life has already slipped away. Mang Ryo curses, refusing to accept that his prey, Jagang, could die so prematurely. Mang Ryo hurriedly unties him, determined to save Jagang's life at any cost. Mang Ryo lifts Jagang up and begins the process of reviving him. Mang Ryo mutters to himself, frantically calculating a way to detoxify Jagang. Mang Ryo lets out a cold, sinister laugh, swearing that he won't let Jagang die so easily. Jagang's blood drips onto the floor, signaling that life is beginning to return to him. Mang Ryo pants heavily. He has exhausted a significant amount of his internal energy to tether Jagang to this world. Mang Ryo channels his internal energy into Jagang's pressure points to force the poison out. Even though the immediate crisis has passed, Mang Ryo still finds Jagang to be a troublesome asset to manage. Just then, a subordinate enters to deliver a message to Mang Ryo. The subordinate reports that the Muram Alliance is coming for a visit and demands Mang Ryo's presence at the meeting. Mang Ryo reluctantly agrees. He has to put the torture of Jagang on hold for now. Mang Ryo turns back to look at Jagang one last time before leaving. Jagang lies motionless, still caught in the struggle between life and death. Mang Ryo threatens Jagang, asserting that he will never let him slip out of his grasp. Mang Ryo leaves the room, abandoning Jagang to his pain and solitude. After Mang Ryo leaves, Jagang remains tightly bound to the board, his body completely paralyzed after the brutal torture. A desolate silence fills the room, broken only by the sound of Jagang gasping for breath amidst his bleeding wounds. Jagang's hand trembles as blood drips from his wounds, staining the floor in the chilling silence. Using the last of his strength, Jagang tries to pull himself up. His eyes reveal that he has not yet abandoned hope, even though his body has reached its absolute limit. Determination flickers in Jagang's eyes. Despite the excruciating pain, his will to survive burns more intensely than ever before. The Poison Master stands silently amidst the darkness, muttering a sarcastic remark upon seeing Li Jun personally seeking him out here. Maintaining his twisted grin, the Poison Master lets out a haughty and provocative challenge.
Unfazed, the Poison Master confidently asserts that he will use Jagang as a test subject for his ultimate poison.
With eyes turning cold, the Poison Master begins to sense something unusual from the metallic scent and toxins lingering in the air. As the door creaks open, the Poison Master cautiously observes his surroundings. Suddenly, a venomous snake lunges from the shadows, catching the Poison Master off guard. Reacting instantly, the Poison Master uses his bare hands to intercept the snake's lethal strike. Staring at the creature in his grasp, the Poison Master is stunned to realize it is an ironclad black snake, a species that should not be here. With cold sweat trickling down, the Poison Master begins to sense an unexpected danger. The Poison Master turns back to survey the cluttered room, where reptilian creatures are lurking everywhere. From beneath the crevices, more snakes slither out, creating a terrifying scene. The Poison Master murmurs in disbelief, unable to fathom how Jagang could still maintain the strength to act. Bursts of anger erupt. The Poison Master roars, questioning Jagang for betraying him despite having been saved. Gritting his teeth, the Poison Master knows that even if Jagang's body was broken, he must have surely left behind a trail. Losing his composure, the Poison Master smashes a vial, frantically searching for any trace. The Poison Master's breathing becomes ragged, his patience has completely evaporated. The Poison Master's gaze locks onto a wooden plank where some unusual markings are visible. The Poison Master realizes this is the hole used to dispose of waste and excess toxins. A spark of realization flashes in the Poison Master's mind. He has deduced Jagang's escape route. The Poison Master sneers, mocking Jagang's stupidity for choosing this place as a hideout. The Poison Master clicks his tongue, refusing to believe a human could fit through such a small hole. The Poison Master kneels down, reaching out to examine the plank with a menacing look. A cruel glint flashes in the Poison Master's eyes as he determines to end it all right here. As the Poison Master pries at the plank, a sharp gust of air suddenly surges out. The Poison Master panics as he realizes he has fallen into a trap, with an unexpected attack striking him. Clutching his hand, the Poison Master stares in shock at what just attacked him. A razor-sharp piece of bamboo is embedded deep into the wall, with poison dripping from it. The Poison Master is horrified, his face filled with terror as he realizes he has been poisoned. The Poison Master realizes in shock that this toxin is the very same one he used to concoct, now gnawing at his own body. The Poison Master collapses to the ground, vomiting blood as his breathing grows rapid in sheer bewilderment. His trembling hands claw at the floor, feeling the agonizing pain of the grotesque poison slowly corroding his body. As blood stains the floor, the Poison Master panics, realizing he has been struck by an unknown toxin he has never encountered before. In agony, the Poison Master attempts to crawl, desperately searching for an antidote to save himself. The Poison Master's eyes blaze with utter hatred, screaming internally at the one who drove him to this desperate state. From inside the old wicker basket, a cold snaketail slowly slithers out, flickering in the shadows. The Poison Master's eyes widen, terror etched upon his aged face as he realizes the imminent danger. Jagang sits quietly atop the basket, shrouded in darkness, his cold eyes fixed on his target. Jagang grips the venomous snake tightly, his burning red eyes radiating lethal killing intent. Jagang turns his head, his face reveals deep fatigue, yet his gaze remains resolute and ruthless. The Poison Master is in absolute shock, unable to believe that Jagang is still here, right in this very room. The venomous snake opens its jaws, bearing razor-sharp fangs dripping with poison, ready to deliver the killing blow. Other snakes begin to slither out from the basket, creating a chilling scene as they encircle the Poison Master. The Poison Master recoils, staring intently at Jagang, who is lurking in the shadows of the basket. Jagang watches the Poison Master with hollow eyes, surrounded by a swarm of snakes protecting him. The Poison Master cries out bitterly, consumed by hatred for his own negligence in letting Jagang corner him. The Poison Master suddenly freezes as a horrific truth about the origin of this poison flashes through his mind. Jagang steps out from the darkness, his cold voice resonating with resentment. There is no way out left for the Poison Master. The Poison Master screams Jagang's name, the fear of death slowly taking hold of his mind. Jagang stumbles under the moonlight, each step heavy with the weight of his wounds and the pain in his heart. Jagang walks alone through the nocturnal forest, surrounded by the sound of wind whistling through the gloomy trees. Jagang collapses in exhaustion, overwhelmed by painful memories that make it impossible for him to stand. Jagang's face is drenched in sweat and tears, the inner conflict between guilt and agony etched into every feature. Jagang torments himself for having finished off his enemy, yet the pain within his heart remains unassuaged. A tear falls to the ground, blending with the sorrow that is gnawing at Jagang's soul. Jagang sobs uncontrollably, wishing that all these horrific events were nothing but a nightmare. Images of the victims flood his mind, the unfortunate souls who perished at the hands of the Venom sect. Jagang kneels in the darkness, feeling lost and unsure of what to do next after all the loss he has endured. Suddenly, a strange sound echoes, startling Jagang, his eyes widening in alert. Jagang peers toward the bushes where two strangers are watching. He tries to reassure himself that it was just an animal. In the dead of night, subordinates anxiously discuss an emergency summons to the main conference hall now that Li Jung from the Martial Arts Alliance has arrived. They suspect Li Jung's presence is to investigate the Venom sect's shady activities, as someone must have leaked the matter to the Martial Arts Alliance. From the shadows, Jagang watches silently. The mere mention of the Martial Arts Alliance leaves him stunned. Li Jung sternly reminds his men to hurry to the elders' meeting, for the arrival of the Martial Arts Alliance is not to be taken lightly. Jagang knows well that the Martial Arts Alliance is a gathering of the righteous sects, the ones who arbitrate right from wrong in conflicts large and small. A glimmer of hope sparks in Jagang's eyes. He tells himself this is the only chance to expose all the injustices that the 100-Flower Valley has endured. Meanwhile, an elder respectfully invites his master to head inside to escape the evening frost. The young master, possessing a calm temperament, turns his head slightly, his cold gaze fixed straight ahead. Night falls over the headquarters, where the Dokman sect is sending out a cryptic greeting. The greeting is addressed to the Martial Arts Alliance General, Li Jung. In the shadows, a pair of eyes is quietly observing every movement. It is Jagang, a boy gripped by overwhelming fear. Jagang knows Li Jung well, the renowned general of the Alliance. If that person truly is Li Jung, the dark secrets of the Dokman will surely be exposed. Two Dokman disciples patrol with torches in hand, completely unaware of the one lurking in the dark. Jagang holds his breath, using the darkness to evade their search. Jagang darts down the corridor, struggling to keep his distance from those carrying torches. Each of Jagang's steps feels heavy, and exhaustion begins to wash over him. Standing before the door, Jagang is frantic, not knowing how to begin telling Li Jung everything. The door suddenly swings open, and Li Jung appears right before his eyes. Jagang is stunned, unable to believe his eyes as he sees Li Jung standing there. Li Jung is discussing business with an old man, and the atmosphere turns tense. The old man confidently boasts about their training results, believing they will not disappoint the Alliance. Li Jung coldly replies, stating they are not yet strong enough to overcome the front lines in the Unnam region. The old man speaks in a gruff tone, questioning what more the Alliance could want after all their efforts. Li Jung turns his back, asserting that he only expects them to strengthen themselves, not to cause further trouble. Li Jung mentions the survivor from the Wang clan of the Yakman medical sect who had been hunted by the Dokman. Li Jung's hand tightens around the hilt of his sword, a threatening gesture. Li Jung's sharp gaze bores directly into the old man, making him flinch. The old man trembles, feeling the terrifying pressure radiating from Li Jung. Jagang is shocked. It turns out the Dokman were not just targeting the Baekwa Valley. Jagang grits his teeth, determined to deliver the news about the Baekwa Valley at all costs. The old man admits that controlling members of the Yakman has never been an easy task. The old man suspects that someone managed to escape during the recent chaos. Li Jung questions the old man's loyalty, demanding an honest answer. The old man reassures Li Jung that the plan to eliminate those remaining in the tunnels is already underway. Even so, the old man cannot help but worry about the one who fled. Li Jung turns his head, his cold eyes filled with hidden meaning. Jagang is aghast, his face clearly showing horror upon hearing the cruel response. Li Jung coldly gives an order, leaving no room for error. Jagang trembles, his breathing shallow as he realizes the brutality behind Li Jung's assertion. Truth about the Martial Arts Alliance leaves Jagang stunned, his heart tightening with fear. Li Jung remains unbothered, maintaining an overwhelming and authoritative demeanor. Li Jung and the old man prepare for a dark scheme without the slightest hesitation. The sword leaves its sheath, a flash of steel signaling that a massacre is about to begin. Li Jung swings his sword, piercing through the wooden wall. His decisive action leaves the old man astonished. The sword tip punches through the wall, leaving behind a deep, powerful crack. Li Jung sheathes his sword, his face remaining as calm as if nothing had happened. Li Jung's gaze turns somber, silencing all suspicion with an unsettling quiet. In the shadows, Jagang holds his breath, struggling to remain hidden as Li Jung prepares to leave. Jagang collapses. The horrifying truth about the Martial Arts Alliance leaves him completely shattered. Jagang cannot believe his ears. His faith in justice has been utterly obliterated. In the darkness, Jagang cowers, listening to the chilling sounds coming from outside. Li Jung and the old man walk in silence, darkness engulfing the corridor. Li Jung and the old man pass by, completely unaware of Jagang's presence as he watches them. The wooden door slams shut, sealing away the bloody secrets within. Jagang falls before the door, desperate and crippled by his own helplessness. Jagang is stunned as he realizes the true face of those who claim to be righteous. The corruption of the Martial Arts Alliance sends a chill down Jagang's spine. Jagang grits his teeth in agony, remembering the tragic death of his comrade.
Jagang's fists clench tight, his fury has reached its breaking point.
Under the cold moonlight, unforgivable crimes are slowly coming to light. The corpse lies in the darkness, insects beginning to crawl over the cold remains. The old man embraces Jagang, tears falling amidst the tragic scene. With the final words spoken, Jagang is forced to continue living in pain. Jagang vows to himself that strength will be his only weapon for revenge. A fire of hatred ignites in Jagang's eyes. The path of vengeance has officially begun. Banquet at the Venom sect begins in the stillness of the night as darkness drapes over the ancient tiled roofs.
The old man raises his wine cup, loudly demanding the attention of everyone present at the banquet.
Amidst the lavish feast, the old man solemnly introduces Li Zheng, the powerful general visiting the Venom sect to celebrate the sect's great achievements. The old man proudly declares that the Venom sect is about to have its own general within the ranks of the Martial Arts Alliance, and Li Zheng is the witness to that fact. In high spirits, Li Zheng smiles faintly, raising his wine cup to acknowledge the old man's toast. Suddenly, a subordinate enters, disrupting the festive atmosphere and causing the old man to turn around in surprise.
The subordinate approaches and whispers unsettling news into the old man's ear.
The old man's expression shifts completely, revealing shock at the information he just received. Li Zheng calmly continues drinking, asking whether something has gone wrong. Li Zheng stares directly at the old man, coldly reminding him to be certain that every word spoken is the truth. The old man rushes away, leaving Li Zheng alone to ponder over his wine cup. Outside, the old man demands to know why someone fainted so inexplicably. The old man cannot believe it, as the person is a veteran who has studied poisons for decades. There is no way he would make such a foolish mistake. The old man suddenly remembers the toy that the man frequently used for his experiments. The subordinate confirms that he often used prisoners from the 100 Flower Valley as test subjects. The old man deduces that if that person was the one who crippled the other's legs, the body should still be there, but its disappearance is a highly suspicious sign. Realizing the risk of the 100 Flower Valley's downfall being exposed, the old man orders his subordinates to find the person at all costs. With a murderous look on his face, the old man commands that whether the person is dead or alive, they must be brought back. In the pitch-black night, the captured group trudged forward under the watchful eyes of their ruthless captors. A guard roared in fury, urging the group to hasten their pace as time was running out. Unable to contain his impatience at their sluggishness, he barked orders, forcing the exhausted captives to keep moving. Hiding in the bushes, the disciple of the sorrowful Flower Valley watched silently, wondering about the fate of the survivors. Meanwhile, Mang Rio was plotting to eliminate everyone in the secret tunnel to silence them for good. A shrill scream pierced the air as an old man was brutally kicked to the ground by a guard. The Snake Clan rushed in panic to the side of the fallen elder, while the perpetrator continued to spew insults. A man, unable to suppress his outrage, stood up to defend the elder against the cruelty of these men. The hulking man flashed a sinister grin. He wanted to see what painful end awaited the one who dared to defy him. Without hesitation, the hulking man grabbed the man by the collar, meeting his resistance with grim threats. Sneering, the hulking man declared that compassion was nothing but the language of the weak, used only to beg for mercy. Growing bored of the transport, the hulking man drew his weapon, preparing to end it all right there. A vicious slash tore through the air, streaking toward his opponent with terrifying speed. The sharp blade sliced through, and blood began to splatter in the dark of night. The young man was stunned, a deep gash on his cheek causing him excruciating pain. The hulking man whispered with murderous intent, admitting he wanted nothing more than to kill the youth on the spot. But due to orders to bring everyone to the tunnel, the hulking man suppressed his bloodlust and ordered the youth onto the carriage. Behind them, the others hurried to help each other, anxiously asking about the young man's wound. Amidst the chaos, the disciple of the sorrowful Flower Valley watched quietly, his presence drawing everyone's attention. The carriage continued to roll under the bright moonlight, carrying the unfortunate souls forward. The caravan moved through treacherous mountain passes, surrounded by dense forests. On the carriage, the captives huddled together, their faces etched with exhaustion and fear. The man stared at the disciple of the sorrowful Flower Valley, realizing he was definitely not from his clan. They quickly realized that the disciple of the sorrowful Flower Valley looked nothing like anyone belonging to that organization. Facing their questioning gazes, the disciple of the sorrowful Flower Valley calmly admitted he was from the sorrowful Flower Valley. The crowd buzzed with confusion. They couldn't fathom how someone from that place ended up in this situation. The young man was shaken. Had that organization attacked the sorrowful Flower Valley as well? The disciple of the sorrowful Flower Valley bowed his head, the atmosphere becoming heavier than ever. The young man bitterly realized everything had been calculated in advance, and he couldn't help but wonder about the appearance of the disciple of the sorrowful Flower Valley. The disciple of the sorrowful Flower Valley recalled his grim past, where he had been a test subject for the Wudu Jiao 5 Poisons cult before narrowly escaping. Jagang looked at the trembling disciple of the sorrowful Flower Valley, warning in a low voice that this prison wagon wouldn't lead to the freedom he hoped for. Wagon carrying the wretches continued onward, and Jagang sighed, knowing their destination was no different from a living hell. The disciple of the sorrowful Flower Valley scanned his surroundings, trying to assess the situation of the guards. The eyes of the disciple of the sorrowful Flower Valley settled on the guards, watching them closely. The tension was evident on his dirt-streaked face. Jagang realized the intention of the disciple of the sorrowful Flower Valley and immediately stopped him, advising him not to act recklessly and to give up on fighting back. Jagang analyzed the situation, asserting that the ringleader possessed overwhelming power while emphasizing that the poison had left everyone too weak to easily defeat Mang Ryo. The disciple of the sorrowful Flower Valley suddenly spoke up, asking Jagang how he would feel if he had a type of poison on him. Jagang was skeptical, as the Wudu Jiao were masters of poison and could neutralize any toxin almost instantly. The disciple of the sorrowful Flower Valley insisted that this poison was extremely potent, leaving Jagang to question its origin and reliability. The disciple of the sorrowful Flower Valley revealed that this very poison was what allowed him to take down his torturer, creating the chance for his escape. With eyes filled with hatred, the disciple from the sorrowful Flower Valley recounted how that person slaughtered their clan and family without mercy. Jagang was stunned, desperately pressing for the identity of the culprit. The name Mang Ryo was barely uttered before the air seemed to freeze, horror etched onto the faces of those sharing the same plight. Whispers rippled through the crowd. They couldn't believe the disciple from the sorrowful Flower Valley had survived an encounter with an elder of the Five Poisons sect. Still skeptical, Jagang demanded that the disciple from the sorrowful Flower Valley reveal where they were hiding that dangerous poison. The disciple from the sorrowful Flower Valley raised their hand, preparing to reveal the terrifying truth. The disciple bit down hard on their finger, forcing droplets of a strange liquid to ooze from their body. Looking at their hand, the disciple insisted that this was the only weapon they possessed. The poisonous aura radiating from the liquid on the disciple's hand made Jagang shiver. It was pure, lethal poison. Jagang was left in shock, unable to fathom how a human body could contain such horrific toxins. The disciple explained that they had consumed the five-colored centipede unleashed by the Five Poisons sect, which gradually made their body immune to various poisons. The disciple recounted the agonizing days when Mang Ryo turned them into a test subject, injecting countless poisons into their veins. The disciple recalled the moment they were on the verge of death as their own blood soaked the earth, becoming a poison imbued with pure hatred. Jagang went silent, then requested to examine the disciple's body to verify their current condition. As he placed his hand on the disciple, Jagang felt a strange flow of energy circulating within. Although the meridians were blocked, every weak point in the disciple's body was interconnected by a terrifying, malevolent energy. Jagang concluded that the extreme agony had caused the toxins to accumulate, and they were now being secreted directly from the disciple's blood. The disciple affirmed their intention to use this very poison to find a way to escape. Jagang hurriedly intervened, questioning with deep concern whether this plan was truly feasible or would simply lead them all to death. Amidst the circle of desperate men, one person warned of imminent death, asking if anyone realized the absurdity of their situation. The man nodded in agreement, admitting they were being driven into a dark tunnel, yet still clinging to the hope of survival if they followed orders. Jagang spoke up, asserting that no matter how harsh the labor, he believed that as long as there is life, there is hope, while death means losing everything. Jagang's affirmation left those around him astonished, and they challenged his certainty with skeptical questions. The disciple from the sorrowful Flower Valley immediately countered, arguing that the plan to enter the tunnel would only prolong their suffering and make things worse. Jagang looked them straight in the eye, coldly asking if they were any different from animals if they were willing to trade their dignity for a few miserable years of life. Facing Jagang's stern words, those around him were shaken, and silence enveloped the space. The man spoke up and admitted that Jagang was right, that this was not the time for them to abandon hope and surrender to fate. Jagang analyzed the situation, asserting that entering the tunnel was no different from suicide, and this was their only chance now that the enemy forces had thinned out. The man confirmed Jagang's identity and urgently requested his aid in this dire situation. Under the bright moonlight, the request for cooperation was voiced, opening a glimmer of hope for those held captive. The prisoner transport carriage continued to roll through the dark night, shaking violently like the fates of the people inside. Jagang formally introduced himself and expressed his desire to get to know the vice commander. The vice commander expressed deep gratitude, admitting that it was Jagang's efforts that had reignited their fighting spirit after being betrayed. Jagang replied calmly, emphasizing that the plan had not yet begun and his goal was not just the survival of one individual. The sound of galloping horses grew intense, and a sudden order to halt was given, cutting off the group's conversation. A burly man on horseback charged over, loudly declaring a summons order, leaving everyone on the carriage in shock. Jagang and his comrades locked eyes, their expressions filled with tension as they faced the sudden turn of events right before them. In the dead of night, the bald leader is left in shock by the news that a prisoner has escaped. The bald leader cannot hide his disbelief regarding the fugitive's capabilities, especially since even the elder was taken down. The cavalryman focuses his attention on the convoy, desperately searching for any trace of the escapee. The cavalryman suspects that the fugitive might be hiding among the prisoners in the carriage. When questioned about the fugitive's appearance, the young man can only shake his head, having no detailed information at all. The rugged terrain makes turning back impossible, and the time pressure from the Alliance weighs heavily upon them. The young man interrupts the argument, asserting that he has a better plan. The bald leader confirms the total number of people to be escorted is 11, a specific number to start the check. Bald leader reckons that if the headcount is correct, they should just continue. No one would be foolish enough to swap their own kin into such a situation. The bald leader begins to count them one by one, very slowly. The cold sound of his counting echoes, causing the cowering prisoners to tremble. As the count approaches 11, the atmosphere around the bald leader becomes thick with tension. The bald leader's finger stops, a terrifying silence descends. Twisted smile creeps across the bald leader's face as he detects the irregularity. The attacker cannot mask his frustration and rage upon being exposed. The bald leader chuckles with glee, amused by the ironic predicament of those trying to hide the prisoner. The bald leader mocks the compassion of his opponents, while others around him prepare to draw their blades. The bald leader swings his blade, declaring the cruel fate that awaits them. The attacker contemplates the poison he has on hand, but the window of opportunity to use it has already passed. The attacker is gripped by extreme panic as the bald leader acts faster than anticipated, cornering him. A hand rests on the attacker's shoulder, steadying him in this decisive moment. The young man nods in signal, a silent consensus for the next move. Suddenly, the young man lunges out of the carriage, confessing that the fugitive had slipped in without their knowledge. The attacker attempts to negotiate, promising to point out the fugitive in exchange for the lives of the others. The bald leader ignores the plea and swings his blade in a preemptive strike. The bald leader's brutal attack lands, leaving all witnesses horrified. Bald leader coldly brushes off any attempts to intervene, claiming the person had disrupted his business. The bald leader orders that the blame be pinned on the fugitives, viewing this slaughter as a trivial matter. Enraged beyond measure, the attacker shouts at the cold-blooded brutality of the bald leader, questioning the value of human life. The bald leader remains completely indifferent. He swings his blood-stained blade and nonchalantly declares that death awaits them all. Without giving the bald leader time to react, the young man screams an order to attack immediately. At his command, the group charges forward simultaneously, closing in on the bald leader from all sides. The attacker charges with his knife, but the bald leader reacts instantly, blocking the deadly strike with his blade. The bald leader stands his ground, nonchalantly observing the crowd rushing toward him with a mocking expression. The attacker grinds his teeth, furious at the dirty tactics the bald leader employs. Without hesitation, the bald leader slashes horizontally, coldly ordering the execution of the attacker. The fatal blow causes the attacker to collapse, sent flying backward instantly. Seeing his comrade fall, the young man goes berserk, swearing to finish off the bald leader at any cost. Suddenly, the fugitive chaser is struck, blood gushing from his mouth in utter astonishment. The fugitive chaser crumbles to the ground, gasping for air, and stares at the bald leader with eyes full of terror. In his final moments, the escaping pursuer could only utter a fearful cry for bald leader. The cavalryman was stunned as he witnessed the horrific scene unfolding before his eyes. Overcome with terror, the cavalryman turned his horse around and fled in haste to seek reinforcements. Bald leader narrowed his eyes in contemplation, wondering if his opponent had truly used a shard of broken pottery as a weapon. But bald leader quickly dismissed the thought, for such a minor wound could not possibly kill a man so easily. Bald leader stood there, holding the ceramic shard, staring intently at the person who had just collapsed. Bald leader coldly declared that the rest of them would suffer the same fate as those who had already perished. Bald leader knew full well that their weapons were poisoned, so keeping a safe distance was more than enough. The young man retorted sarcastically, guessing that bald leader was simply trying to drain their stamina. Bald leader flashed an enigmatic smile, denying such a simple-minded plan. Remaining men stood frozen, terrified by the sheer menace radiating from bald leader. Bald leader sneered, eager to show them something even more terrifying than that. The young man was shaken, his instincts warning him that something sinister was about to unfold. A piercing scream echoed as another man fell, sending the entire group into a state of panic. Bald leader was amused, surprised to see that his opponent had actually reached the realm of sword chi. Bald leader lost his patience, declaring that he would put an end to this game immediately. In a blink of an eye, bald leader lunged forward, determined to eliminate them all. The shards of the poison vial lay scattered across the ground. The plan was set, a single scratch would be enough to end the target, even though this mission was far from easy. The group was ready, but sheer determination wasn't enough.
They knew full well that the bald enemy would instantly see through any scheme involving poison. The question was, how would they pull it off?
Jagang made a daring decision.
He would be the one to personally draw the bald enemy's attention.
And that would be the golden opportunity for the others to carry out the next phase of the plan. Jagang's hand tightened around his weapon, his veins bulging with fierce resolve. Without hesitation, Jagang charged straight at the bald enemy with a steel-hard command: take his head. A lethal strike was delivered.
Jagang was stunned to realize he had just achieved the impossible. The bald enemy stood motionless, looking at Jagang with a terrifyingly calm expression. The bald enemy sneered at his opponent's efforts.
To him, that last attack felt like nothing more than a tickle. The bald enemy swung his blood-drenched sword, a savage grin etched across his face. One-armed warrior screamed in despair as he witnessed the scene unfolding before him. A chilling sound echoed out, and blood splattered across the cold ground. Jagang collapsed, and the bald enemy smirked in contempt, shocked that his opponent would stoop so low as to use a child for an assassination attempt. The bald enemy stepped on Jagang, drove his sword into the ground, and demanded to know their final cards.
Exhausted as he was, Jagang refused to give up.
He knew that if he stopped now, everyone else would be doomed. Without the slightest hesitation, the bald enemy swung his sword to finish Jagang off right there. Seeing Jagang fall, the others lunged forward in a frenzy, screaming that the bald enemy was a monster. The bald enemy didn't flinch. He swung his blade, wiping out anyone who stood in his way. The scene turned into pure chaos, with blood painting the trail red in the dark of night. A massive explosion erupted, blasting everything in the vicinity away. Amidst the thick cloud of dust and debris, one silhouette remained standing. The one-armed warrior tried to force himself up, his eyes filled with seething hatred. The one-armed warrior used his remaining arm to shield himself, desperately searching for a way to counterattack. The one-armed warrior's eyes widened as he realized in horror that their fate had already been sealed.
Heart-wrenching screams rang out as his companions fell one by one.
The bald enemy strolled over, mockingly asking about the rank of the man lying on the ground. The bald enemy licked his blood-stained blade, savoring the suffering of the weak.
Choking back tears, the one-armed warrior called the bald enemy a monster in the depths of his agony.
The bald enemy coldly counted the victims. The number 7 hung in the air like a death sentence. The bald enemy coldly counted the victims. The number 8 rang out like a death sentence, leaving Jagang standing there in a firm defensive stance. The count continued to 9. Jagang's head dropped, his breath coming in ragged gasps with blood seeping from the wound on his chest. Jagang gritted his teeth and questioned why the bald enemy was counting, his gaze remaining unfaltering. The bald enemy laughed, casually declaring that he was counting how long it would take for Jagang to draw his final breath. Faced with the bald enemy's arrogance, Jagang could only shake his head in disdain, convinced that the man had truly lost his mind. The bald enemy didn't care. He stepped forward, his blood dripping onto the ground as a testament to Jagang's end. The one-armed warrior was suddenly stunned, a giant question mark forming in his mind as he saw the bald enemy's expression shift abruptly. The bald enemy began to cough violently, blood spewing from his mouth. He realized with horror that his body was being consumed by the poison. Intense pain struck him down, and the bald enemy collapsed, using his sword for support as black blood poured from him. The bald enemy shrieked in disbelief, insisting that Jagang had never touched him, yet the poison had somehow seeped deep within. The bald enemy stared in terror at Jagang, who was still standing despite his battered and broken body. Jagang coldly raised his hand, where poison was seeping out, responding to the bald enemy with utter contempt. The bald enemy trembled. He couldn't believe he had been so careless as to swallow such a lethal toxin.
Jagang clenched his blood-stained hand, his hollow gaze looking as if he were witnessing the end of his opponent. The bald enemy recalled the preceding moment when his blade grazed Jagang, wondering if that was exactly when he was poisoned.
Jagang confirmed that it was the bald enemy's nasty habit of licking his blade that had caused him to commit suicide with the poison on it. The bald enemy lay there, gasping and asking if it was really that simple, while Jagang kept a safe distance.
The bald enemy tried to lure Jagang into joining the poison cult, promising him advancement in exchange for the antidote.
Jagang gave a faint, mocking laugh, sarcastically noting how the man who once despised the weak was now kneeling and begging for mercy.
Jagang declared that his resolve for revenge would never waver, pointing out that the bald enemy was in no position to decide his fate.
The one-armed warrior raised his sword high, preparing to deliver the final blow to the bald enemy lying at his feet. The bald enemy's eyes widened, his bloodied face filled with sheer terror as the blade descended. Jagang collapsed from exhaustion, struggling to rise after the grueling life-or-death battle. The sound of rapid hoofbeats echoed through the night, carrying the survivors away from the blood-soaked battlefield.
The one-armed warrior carefully supported Jagang, informing him that he had regained consciousness after his coma. The one-armed warrior gently reminded Jagang that his wounds required rest after receiving first aid. Deep in the forest, the one-armed warrior expressed his profound gratitude for Jagang's help in avenging their clan's ancient grudge.
Jagang fell silent, blaming himself, thinking that if he hadn't appeared on that fateful carriage, no one would have had to sacrifice their lives. The one-armed warrior comforted him softly, asserting that even if they had survived, they would only face further pain and that death was nothing to fear. Jagang carried the pain of loss within him, but the flame of hatred had not been extinguished. Even though the leader had fallen, the poison snake cult remained. Jagang told himself this was only the beginning. He had to become stronger to carry out true vengeance. One-armed warrior looked at Jagang with a determined gaze, trusting that Jagang possessed the resolve to see it through. He entrusted his final hope to him, urging Jagang to settle this blood debt on their behalf. Suddenly, Jagang turned back to look at the one-armed warrior, filled with anxiety. Jagang realized the bald enemy was still pursuing them relentlessly, refusing to give them a moment's rest. The one-armed warrior did not hesitate. He used his remaining hand to grab Jagang, decisively pushing him onto the horse to escape. With a powerful shove, the one-armed warrior pushed Jagang away, deciding to sacrifice himself to stall the approaching bald enemy. The one-armed warrior looked back, his eyes calm as if he had cast off all burdens. He whispered a final farewell to Jagang before facing the bald enemy. Jagang was devastated, his eyes wide as he watched the one-armed warrior's retreating silhouette, a sense of helplessness overwhelming his mind. A terrifying clash erupted behind them, and dust clouds signaled that the life-or-death battle had begun, but Jagang had to keep riding forward. Amidst the rapid hoofbeats in the dark, Jagang slumped over the horse, screaming in desperate agony as he was forced to leave the one-armed warrior behind. Tears fell down his scarred face, and Jagang clenched his fists. He swore to the heavens that he would never forgive those who committed these atrocities. Under the cold moonlight, Jagang rode alone into the darkness. The blood oath had been made. He would not rest until the bald enemy paid for his crimes. A scene of desolate carnage with bodies scattered everywhere. A horrific tragedy has just unfolded. The old man screams in extreme fury, unable to believe the utter failure of his subordinates. The old man questions the commander on how such a grave mistake was allowed to happen. The commander breaks the bad news. The leader whom the old man trusted has been killed. The old man goes berserk as his long-term efforts go down the drain. He orders them to find the culprit at any cost. The old man hurriedly intervenes, emphasizing that Lord Yang must absolutely not find out about this incident. In the heat of the moment, Lord Yang suddenly appears, leaving the old man panicked and speechless. Lord Yang coldly declares that he will leave tomorrow, ignoring all of the old man's pleas. Lord Yang compares the factions within the alliance to mere stones, criticizing their weakness under pressure. Lord Yang's sharp gaze bores into the failure, alluding to the shameful actions that just took place. The old man trembles, begging Lord Yang for one final chance to redeem himself and hunt down the enemy. Lord Yang coldly grants them one last chance, accompanied by a stern warning of the consequences if they fail again. The old man painfully realizes the desperate deadlock the demonic sect Tafai faces under pressure from above. In a fit of rage, the old man stomps his foot hard, venting his deep-seated frustration. The old man storms into the room, shouting and demanding the whereabouts of the man lying on the sickbed. The man on the bed is gasping for air, his breathing shallow and in critical condition. Looking at the dying man, the old man bitterly utters that the one responsible for this has escaped. Man is horrified to learn that the enemy has truly slipped out of the demonic sect's control. Overcome by pain and resentment, the man tenses up in a fit of convulsions. The old man screams in desperation, demanding the man provide clues to track down the enemy. The old man leans down, intently observing the reaction of the man lying on the bed. The old man is stunned as he notices something unusual about the man. Time flies, and a few weeks have passed since that day. Rabbit gazes blankly as the berries roll away. Jagang hides quietly behind a tree, silently observing the rabbit. Jagang wonders how long it has been since he escaped the demonic sect. His wounds have healed miraculously. Jagang realizes that hiding forever is not a long-term plan. It is time for him to take action. In the bustling town, Jagang walks alone with a weary and exhausted appearance. Every step Jagang takes leaves an imprint on the ground, his eyes showing dark circles after long days of fleeing. Jagang tries to gather information from the local people, searching for any clue about a new life. With the crowd passing by busily, little Jagang feels completely lost in this facade of peace. Jagang stands silently watching happy families, a sense of loneliness engulfing his mind. Jagang tells himself to keep his presence hidden from prying eyes. Jagang silently feels lucky that he hasn't run into anyone from the poison cult Jiao Fai Duak yet. Jagang wonders what to do next while his feet still trudge heavily through the crowd. Jagang seeks out a quiet eatery, hoping to overhear important information. Jagang cautiously enters, his gaze carefully observing the busy shop owner. Gathering all his courage, Jagang speaks up, asking about a place where he could find work. Upon hearing the story of Jagang's family being robbed, the man couldn't help but show sympathy. The man suggested that if Jagang wanted a stable life, he should seek out wealthy clans.
The man advised Jagang to approach Lord Yang, the most influential figure in these lands.
When Jagang mentioned the poison sect, the man immediately turned cautious and warned him not to get involved with them. The man revealed that the poison sect had just been attacked by the medical sect, leaving the situation in complete chaos.
Jagang coldly judged that, in his eyes, the members of the poison sect were merely playing the victim.
The man continued, explaining that the poison sect was capturing people and throwing them into the mines. Upon hearing the name 100 Flower Valley, Jagang was left shaken. The truth about the captives began to surface. Jagang pressed him for the location of the mines, his excessive curiosity causing the man to grow suspicious. Realizing his cover was blown, Jagang immediately darted away, leaving the man too stunned to react. As he ran, Jagang calculated if there were survivors from 100 Flower Valley, it meant there were others like him still out there.
Jagang tormented himself, wondering if his own escape was the reason the others were suffering in agony.
Jagang stopped, his bare feet gripping the earth. He had to make a decision right then and there. Jagang tried to steady himself. Even if this was a trap, he couldn't abandon the chance to save the others. Jagang clenched his fists, his eyes hardening with newfound resolve. Jagang told himself that he was the only hope left to rescue the survivors from the poison sect. From high above, the old man observed the groups being escorted into the Manhwa mines, his expression calculating.
The commander approached the old man, asking about the irregularities in the plan they were executing.
The old man looked angry, admitting that the plan to use the people as bait had failed because the primary target was still in hiding. Maintaining an eerie calm, the old man insisted that the target would surely appear and demanded everyone be more patient. The man sneered cruelly. He did not hide his insane excitement at the thought of tearing his opponent to shreds. The bone-deep pain that lasted for days had pushed the man to the brink of insanity until the strongest antidote was finally created. Hatred surged in his eyes as he gritted his teeth, remembering the one who had heartlessly robbed him of his eyes and legs. The name Jagang rang out like a death sentence. The target the man had been dying to kill with his own hands had finally revealed himself. The old man gripped his cane so hard his knuckles turned white. His patience had finally reached its limit. With eyes filled with bloodlust, the man roared in excitement, urging Jagang to hurry toward his death. Amidst the majestic mountain scenery, Jagang stands alone on the edge of a cliff, looking down at a land fraught with danger. Jagang observes silently, his eyes reflecting a keen sense of wariness as he contemplates this gloomy place. Unexpectedly, Jagang recognizes familiar faces. The old man is right below, and they are all struggling under the weight of heavy baskets. Memories come flooding back, images of Jagang being shielded and protected by his loved ones during more peaceful days. Jagang clenches his fists, struggling to suppress the surging emotions within his heart. With a sharp, determined gaze, Jagang is ready for his plan. Looking down, the sheer number of guards makes infiltrating the mine extremely difficult. Jagang wonders, what should he do now? Suddenly, a small, hidden warehouse catches Jagang's eye, like a glimmer of hope amidst the enemy's encirclement. Jagang focuses his gaze. This is the potential target to create a distraction. Fire erupts violently, shouts echo everywhere, signaling that the chaos has begun. The soldiers run around in a panic, rushing to fetch water while Jagang quietly hides and observes from afar. The old man stands bewildered by the chaotic scene, unable to understand what is happening. Jagang emerges from the shadows, gently calling for everyone to gather. Jagang's sudden appearance leaves the old man shocked and stunned. Jagang looks at them with tearful eyes. He cannot hide the joy of reuniting with his kin. The reunion takes place deep within the dark mine, where they share stories of the hardships they have endured. Jagang asserts that he does not want to be the sole survivor, and their presence is the very reason he returned. The old man is deeply moved, feeling a sense of relief that there is still hope for their clan's legacy. Jagang firmly declares that he will lead them all out of this living hell. Meanwhile, outside, the soldiers are still busy putting out the fire, completely unaware of the escape plan. Thick smoke and dust shroud the debris, masking Jagang's silent footsteps. Li Beck reports the situation, stating that fortunately there were no casualties, but he expresses suspicion regarding the cause of the fire. A soldier suggests it was merely an accident from the nearby farms, but that theory is immediately dismissed. Li Beck, with a stern expression, warns that negligence is the path to failure. Li Beck affirms that the guarding of the prisoners is being handled strictly and that no one can escape. Facing Li Beck's confidence, another soldier asks doubtfully, what if they aren't escaping, but hiding? Li Beck turns around immediately, his cold gaze piercing the one who asked, sensing something unusual about the fire. Li Beck narrows his eyes suspiciously, realizing this fire was not an accident but a diversionary tactic. At the cave entrance, the guards are on high alert. They sense the presence of an intruder in the area. Standing next to a subordinate, Li Beck asks about the suspicious behavior of the old man leaning on his staff ahead. The old man's eyes constrict, his expression reflecting clear shock upon hearing those words. In the dark cave, the subordinates continue to toil under the flickering torchlight. The old man stares intensely at the item in Jagang's hand. The surrounding air becomes extremely tense. Li Beck flashes a sinister smile, murderous intent flaring across his scarred face. Li Beck screams Jagang's name. His rage seems to have reached its peak. Li Beck's hand grips the staff tightly, halting all movement in a terrifying silence. Li Beck shakes his head in denial, the agony of the past still haunting his mind. Jagang continues to observe quietly, wondering if this is the outcome he truly desires. Li Beck declares that he will personally end Jagang the moment he catches a glimmer of hope or survival. Li Beck slams his hand on the table, announcing the good news that Jagang has walked right into his trap. Li Beck asserts that the deployment of guards has resolved every issue smoothly. Suddenly, Li Beck's eyes widen in shock. An unexpected event has just unfolded. In the tea room, as Weijong and the old man are conversing, the arrival of a new figure shifts the atmosphere entirely. Weijong greets him with a smile, recognizing an old acquaintance, the old man whom he hasn't seen in a long time. The leader of the Poison Valley clan appears with an air of authority, known as the master of hundreds of deadly poisons. Li Beck is stunned by the presence of the Poison Valley leader and demands to know why he is here. The Poison Valley leader explains that he has come to seek Weijong's counsel regarding the current situation. Li Beck presses him on the true purpose of this discussion. The Poison Valley leader draws on the table with his finger, reiterating the old agreement regarding the control of the medicine set. The Poison Valley leader proceeds to expose that someone is secretly tracking and infiltrating the alliance to uncover the details of the agreement. The Poison Valley leader warns of the dangers if the deal is exposed, causing Li Beck to begin calculating his next move. Word exterminate is written on the table, a ruthless decision made to ensure the alliance's security. Li Beck expresses concern for Jagang, but Weijong remains calm and supports the plan. Li Beck shouts in protest, insisting that this is not what they had originally agreed upon. The tension causes Li Beck to stagger. The air in the room becomes stifling and suffocating. The old man takes a sip of tea and nonchalantly declares that the conversation is over. Li Beck can only remain silent, his face twisted in a mixture of extreme rage and helplessness. Jagang refuses to accept his fate, suggesting that they coat their tools with poison to turn them into weapons for battle. Jagang stirs the pain of those who have lost their families, urging them to rise up together and escape this hellish place. With a determined gaze, Jagang questions everyone's resignation and asserts that hope has not yet been extinguished. People around start whispering, skeptical of Jagang's abilities when they see him carrying poison. Suddenly, a massive tremor shakes the entire mine, leaving everyone in a state of shock, wondering what is happening. The guards flee in a panic, coldly announcing that they are about to collapse the entire mine immediately. Faced with such cruelty, the captives beg for mercy, only to be met with disdain and brutal blows from the guards. Guard heartlessly declares this is an order from above, then turns his back, leaving the wretched people to wait for death beneath the rubble. Huge boulders begin to rain down violently, and the space shakes as if to crush everyone left inside. The rumbling sound continues incessantly, and utter terror is etched onto the faces of those left behind. Screams echo throughout the mine as everyone collapses in despair, watching the only exit being sealed off. Everything ends in silence. The exit is completely blocked by massive boulders, imprisoning everyone in eternal darkness. A terrifying impact shook the very foundation of the space, leaving everyone inside the mine in absolute shock. Unable to hide his fury, Gong roared bitterly as he realized the malicious setup behind the mine's closure. Gong shoved aside the boulders blocking his path, determined to escape the debris at any cost. Suddenly, Gong froze as he caught sight of a horrific scene right before his eyes. The mine exit had been completely sealed off by boulders, shattering everyone's hope of survival. Gong slumped down, clutching his head, feeling helpless in the face of such a critical situation. The screams echoed throughout the mine, tearing through the heavy silence. Panic spread, and the miners began whispering frantically about the conspiracy behind the tunnel collapse. They suspected that the poisonous sects had colluded to carry out this vicious plan. Jagang was stunned to realize that he might be the primary target of this deadly trap. Jagang's eyes flashed with suspicion as he began to speculate about the mastermind behind it all. A mysterious figure emerged in his mind, someone Jagang believed to be the true culprit. Panic surged as the miners realized they could not receive any help from the outside. Jagang spoke up to reassure them, sparking a flicker of hope in everyone's hearts. Everyone fell silent, their eyes fixed on Jagang, waiting for a miracle. Gong bellowed, demanding that everyone keep their spirits up instead of giving in to fear. Gong admired Jagang's willpower and urged everyone to take action immediately. Gong pledged to exhaust all his strength to help, determined not to let their lives end here. Gong's words touched the hearts of the miners. They unanimously decided to give it one last try. Jagang expressed his deep gratitude to Gong, who had empowered them all. The reality was far harsher. Digging in the darkness on an empty stomach was a lethal challenge. One by one, they began to tire, the pace of digging slowing as their physical strength faded. The flickering torch against the cliff wall felt like a symbol of hope slowly dying out. Fatigue weighed heavily on the miners' shoulders as they collapsed to the ground in despair. A child's cries of hunger were heart-wrenching, adding to the tragic atmosphere. Jagang persisted with the torch in his hand even though he knew time was running out. Jagang searched for an alternative solution, another way out amidst the deadlock. He decided to crawl into a narrow crevice, gambling everything on one last chance. With eyes wide and anxious, Jagang faced the abyssal darkness ahead. Jagang held the torch alone in the dark cave, the firelight reflecting off the mirror-like still water. Jagang knelt by the water's edge, believing that this water source and the moss were enough to keep everyone alive. Just as he touched the water, Jagang froze, his face twisting in pain from a sharp sting in his throat. Jagang was horrified to realize that the water had been poisoned. Why would that be? Gong explained that this mine was a shared resource used by all the poisonous sects. Jagang was devastated to realize that the poison from the mines had spread even here. The situation was truly dire. If things continued this way. A voice rang out, ordering Group 1 and Group 3 to swap shifts and demanding everyone hand over their tools quickly. Jagang continued to work diligently, calling out words of encouragement for everyone to keep trying together. Gong wearily poured the last drops from his water canteen, his eyes revealing his complete exhaustion. Gong observed Jagang and sighed to himself. Even the strongest young men had collapsed from fatigue, yet Jagang still persisted. Gong learns from Eunuch that Jagang possesses a unique body capable of absorbing toxins, so he gave all his food rations to others, surviving only on water and moss in the mine. Gong secretly admires Jagang, suspecting that he must be feeling a sense of guilt, which is why he is working himself to the bone. Gong and his companion fall silent, and the atmosphere becomes somber. Strange noise echoes as the wooden support beams of the mine begin to crack. Everyone panics as they watch the mine ceiling begin to collapse right before their eyes. The entire mine shakes violently and massive boulders come crashing down amidst harrowing screams. The entire tunnel has completely collapsed and a panicked Jagang cries out for those still trapped inside. Jagang stares helplessly at the giant rocks, feeling desperate because he cannot move them. No way, this cannot be happening. The consequence of placing the pillars incorrectly due to poor lighting has left everyone in a dire situation, with both food and water depleted. Gong hangs his head, wondering if this is truly the end for everyone. Sobs break out everywhere, everyone has given up in despair. The hollow, tear-filled eyes of the survivors speak to their utter hopelessness. Amidst the rubble, Jagang diligently digs with his bare hands, refusing to abandon hope. Gong looks at Jagang and warns him that he will have to dig alone for years, but Jagang firmly replies that he doesn't care as long as he stays alive. Gong is stunned, realizing that Jagang simply does not know the meaning of giving up. Gong opens up about his past, revealing he was once the sect leader of the Huangtang sect, but even that status couldn't help him protect his loved ones. He knows he will die in agony here. Even as his body withers away, Gong wants to pass on the legacy and martial arts secrets of his sect, believing that Jagang's iron will make him worthy of receiving it all. Gong looks straight into Jagang's eyes and asks if he is willing to carry out his final wish. Gong continues to express his desire to pass on his sect's martial arts. He emphasizes that while the family lacks grand ultimate techniques, their secret arts of venomous silkworm breeding and medicine crafting must not be lost. Not just Gong, but those around him also speak up, expressing their desire for Jagang to accept their legacies as well. Gong shouts in helplessness and heartache, unable to accept placing such a burden on the shoulders of a child like Jagang. The gazes of those around them grow heavy with contemplation. They understand that if Jagang accepts their legacies, he will have to spend his entire life under the weight of these massive responsibilities. Gong chokes out that this is no different from shackling Jagang's life, but Jagang immediately reassures him. Jagang bows his head, his voice calm yet resolute. He asserts that his life was never his own to begin with. Jagang clenches his fists, choking up as he lists the names and sects that have placed their trust in him. Each name is a vow heavy as 1,000 pounds. Jagang looks up, his eyes burning with the will to fight. He swears to strive until his very last breath and insists that he will survive and escape this place. Gong and the others look at Jagang with hopeful eyes. They believe that Jagang is the one who will make those who force them into this misery pay a heavy price. Jagang wears a cold smile, his eyes filled with fiery hatred. As long as he can make those people taste hell, he is ready to shoulder every demand from everyone.